Hello, and welcome to another episode of This Week I Watched. Today, I will be covering 7 films, including classics and newer releases. Let's get it started with the first film, which is from my Criterion Challenge for the year. This is category number 8, films from the 1980s, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Following a group of high school students growing up in Southern California based on the real-life adventures chronicled by Cameron Crowe. Stacey Hamilton is a pretty but inexperienced teen interested in dating. Given advice by her uninhibited friend, Linda Barrett, Stacey gets trapped in a love triangle with nice guy Mark Ratner and his more assured buddy, Mike Damone. Meanwhile, Stacey's classmate, Jeff Spicoli, who lives for surfing and being stoned, faces off against Mr. Hand, a strict teacher who has no time for the slacker's antics. Fast Times at Ridgemont High is streaming on Stars in Canada and on Fubo and AMC Plus in the United States. This was an okay coming-of-age tale that may have worked better when it was released or if I had grown up closer to this time. The characters and acting was okay, but my biggest problem was how the story jumps from month to month through the school year, making it hard for me to follow and connect to everything. I also would have preferred if they had focused more on a smaller set of characters rather than spreading it thin across 6 characters. I rated this film a 3 out of 5. Now let's move on to another classic from Amy Heckerling, who directed Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Clueless from 1995. Shallow, rich, and socially successful, Cher is at the top of her Beverly Hills High School's pecking order. Seeing herself as someone who knows how to talk anyone into doing just about anything, when she can't get a teacher to give her a better grade, Cher coaxes 2 teachers into dating each other to make him happier and maybe a bit laxer on his expectations. Emboldened by her success, she decides to give hopelessly klutzy new student Ty a makeover and attempt to find her a boyfriend. When Ty becomes more popular than she is, Cher realizes that her disapproving ex-stepbrother was right about how misguided she was and falls for him. Clueless is streaming on Netflix and Paramount Plus in Canada and on HBO Max in the United States. First off, I wish that clothes picking software from the beginning of this film existed in real life. This in many ways was Mean Girls before Mean Girls, but from the perspective of Regina George type character, even though Cher is much nicer than Regina George. I really enjoyed this movie, the characters, and their development through to the end. I rated this film a 3.5 out of 5. Now let's move on to the next film, which is another film for my Criterion Challenge for this year. From category number 9, films from the 1990s, The Virgin Suicides. In an ordinary suburban house on a lovely tree-lined street in the middle of 1970s America lived the 5 beautiful, dreamy Lisbon sisters whose doomed fates indelibly marked the neighborhood's boys who, to this day, continue to obsess over them. A story of love and reprehension, fantasy and terror, sex and death, memory and longing. It is at its core a mystery story, a heart-rending investigation into the impenetrable, life-altering secrets of American adolescence. This film is streaming on Hoopla in Canada, if your library has it, or on Hulu, Paramount Plus, Epix, and again, Hoopla in the United States, if your library has it. This film felt its length, even though it was only 96 minutes long. While it is an adaptation of the book, which focuses on the male characters, I think it would have been more compelling from the perspective of the sisters. Thematically, this was an indictment on overly strict parenting and how even though parents want to protect their children, overprotection is not equivalent to love. At least kids don't perceive it that way, and it really isn't. Parents obviously shouldn't be their kids' friends, but they also shouldn't be their warden like they are in this film, where it almost seems like the parents are indoctrinating their children into some sort of cult. I rated this film a 3 out of 5. Now let's move on to another film directed by Sofia Coppola, Lost in Translation. A lonely aging movie star named Bob Harris and a conflicted newlywed, Charlotte, meet in Tokyo. Bob is there to film a Japanese whiskey commercial. Charlotte is accompanying her celebrity photographer husband Strangers in a foreign land, the two find escape, distraction, and understanding amidst the bright Tokyo lights after a chance meeting in the quiet lull of the hotel bar. They form a bond that is as unlikely as it is heartfelt and meaningful. This is available for rent or purchase in Canada or on Tubi or IMDb TV in the US. I enjoyed this movie. I thought Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson were great, and their bond was very believable. I even almost thought that these characters would have an affair. There's not much of a story to it, but it's a very fun journey throughout Tokyo. I rated this film a 3.5 out of 5. Now let's move on to the next film, which will be a newer film, came out just this weekend, Cheaper by the Dozen, 2022. The Bakers are just your average everyday blended family of 12, carefully navigating a hectic home life while simultaneously managing their family business. Baker Breakfast. This film is streaming on Disney Plus in both Canada and the US, as it is a Disney Plus original, although original remake. The opening of this movie gave me a lot of Disney Channel original movie vibes. As it goes on, I started to enjoy it a lot more. I'm glad they didn't do an exact remake of the 2003 film, which many other reviewers have seemed to think it's an original when the original was actually from the 1950s. I also found a lot of comparisons to Yours, Mine, and Ours, and while I haven't seen that film, I don't think that's wholly true from the synopsis. Some backstory on my experience with Cheaper by the Dozen 2003. I grew up watching that film basically every time my cousins from the US came to Canada. I haven't seen it in a while, and I'm genuinely afraid that if I was to watch it today, I might not enjoy it as much as I did when I was a kid. As someone in a multiracial blended family myself, watching this film made me wish that my siblings and I were closer like this family. Although it's pretty hard for us since we were separated by age and didn't all grow up in the same house or city. While I may have found some of the racial commentaries in this film on the nose or surface level, it's something that needed to be addressed, and some of these situations are things that my mother herself has experienced and faced. I thought Zach Braff was a highlight, and his character reminded me a lot of JD from Scrubs. Gabrielle Union also does a great job as the fun, cool mom who is also highly successful and accomplished and helped to make her husband's business the success it was. I also loved how the parents learned and grew into their roles as co-parents, including the divorced parents. I feel like the kids were sidelined more in this story than the 2003 film, but what they did in this film made sense for the story and time. Overall, this was a fun family comedy that was a bit predictable. I think it's being unfairly maligned by those blinded by nostalgia, wokeism, and not truly understanding the experiences of those being represented. I rated this film a 3.5 out of 5. Now let's move on to another recent release done by Edgar Wright, Last Night in Soho. Eloise, an aspiring fashion designer, is mysteriously able to enter the 1960s, where she encounters a dazzling wannabe singer, Sandy. But the glamour is not all it appears to be, and the dreams of the past start to crack and splinter into something far darker. This film is available for rent or purchase in Canada, and in the US. You may be able to find this as well at your local library, like I was able to. I was lucky enough that I put it on hold, so it came in fairly quickly. I had a few questions arise while watching this movie, and even some post watching this film. Before I get into that, I want to say there are some incredibly beautiful visuals, and the acting from Anya Taylor-Joy and Thomasin McKenzie were great. The side or bit characters weren't the greatest and seemed very one note, like the mean popular girl from the city and her clique of other city girls. I was really surprised by the late stage twist, but I've heard others were not. I tend to be more liable to accept what I'm shown on film at face value rather than questioning if it happened or not. Getting back to my questions, first, what autonomy does Eloise have in the past? We see her experience Sandy's life and get a hickey from Jack, but what could she do? Could she change the past? I don't know. That's a question that the movie doesn't seem to answer. Second, why did Eloise have a somewhat false vision of the past other than to mislead the audience? Third, why does it take so long for Eloise to figure out that Miss Collins was Sandy before she's told? The first indication for me was that when she was going through the mail, since I clocked the name Alexandra, which Sandy had said was her real name in the flashback. Something I did notice while the house was burning down was a picture of young Sandy on the wall of Miss Collins's living room, which made me think Eloise should have seen that and realized as soon as she entered her room. One reviewer I follow mentioned that they felt the messaging was muddled relating to the mental health and feminism messages that they were trying to send. That feminism specifically is the world better today, worse today, or the same as the past. I wouldn't disagree with this interpretation that they've had for this film. They also mentioned how it was hard to understand Sandy's motivation with murdering all the men complicit in her prostitution. I would say that while murder is never the right answer and is absolutely wrong, I believe Edgar Wright is justifying it by Miss Collins saying that she had to kill a part of herself every time one of these men sexually used her, meaning they are somewhat complicit in her mental death. Stylistically, this film was, in my opinion, a 4 out of 5, and Edgar Wright's direction is top-notch as usual, but I find its messaging problems and issues enough to drop it to my rating of a 3.5 out of 5. Now let's move on to a Oscar-nominated Best Picture contender, Nightmare Alley. In 1940s New York, down on his luck, Stanton Carlyle endears himself to a clairvoyant and her mentalist husband at a traveling carnival. Using newly acquired knowledge, Carlyle crafts a golden ticket to success by swindling the elite and wealthy. Hoping for a big score, he soon hatches a scheme to con a dangerous tycoon with help from a mysterious psychologist who might be his most formidable opponent yet. Nightmare Alley is streaming on Disney Plus in Canada or Hulu and HBO Max in the US. Guillermo del Toro continues to showcase his fascination with the peculiar, the nature of humanity, and period filmmaking. There's a lot to appreciate when it comes to Nightmare Alley, from the beautiful visuals and smooth cinematography to its great character interactions and dynamics. Despite all of that, this film felt its length for me. That may have something to do with the fact that I predicted the trajectory for Stanton and where he would end the film early in my viewing. I haven't read the book or seen the other film adaptation, but it was fairly easy for me to understand what was going to happen in this film. I rated this a 3 out of 5. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any suggestions or information you'd like to share, please leave a comment down below. If you'd like to see more from me, hit the subscribe button. I'll soon come out with my Oscar prediction video. This will be my 4th year predicting the Oscars. In that video, I will say who I think will win, who I would want to win, and who I think could upset my prediction. I will also cue you in on my history of correct predictions from previous years. And next week, I will also probably be doing another week in review, continuing through my Criterion Challenge, a lot of which are not the most popular films, but I have to watch them at some point in the year, so might as well get them out of the way. Thank you again for watching, and have a great day.